Welcome back to the deep dive. We're taking a stack of your essential reading material and cutting straight to the knowledge nuggets you need to be well informed.
And today, we're diving into a topic that's causing some, let's say, major turbulence in the sales world. You've probably seen the headlines. They're kind of
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah. Robots are taking SDR jobs.
That exact one. Makes it nervous, right?
It does. But look, if that gives you cold sweats, just take a breath. Because our source material immediately clarifies something important. That statement, it's only half right.
Exactly. Yes. Automation is systematically removing, the low skill, high volume, repetitive tasks, stuff associated with early prospecting.
But crucially, what it is not doing is taking over business development entirely. Actually, quite the opposite.
Automation is really accelerating the urgent need for high-skill BD professionals, people who can do more than just dial.
So what this signifies is actually a powerful, I'd say positive evolution for people already working in this space.
It really is.
Yeah.
The opportunity is ripe for traditional SDRs to transition, to level up into true BDRs, mastering strategic prospecting, trust building, and that crucial early activation phase.
And the data backs this up pretty dramatically, doesn't it? This evolution can result in, what, 10 to 20% higher earnings?
Okay.
For the professionals who make that jump.
That's what the numbers show. It's a significant incentive to upskill.
So if you're a business developer listening right now, or maybe a sales leader, or even just curious about where that high-value human interaction is shifting, well, our mission today is to give you the analytical framework.
Right. We're going to give you two specific models, the CSM and CATA models, that show you exactly where to invest your skills and, importantly, how to structure successful teams in this newly automated environment.
And here's a quick foundational insight we pulled from the sources that kind of sets the stage nicely, I think.
Oh, yeah, this was interesting. Think about those really high-end sectors like advanced management consulting or maybe specialized accounting.
Right. They never really had those typical entry-level, high-volume BD roles, did they?
Never. And why? Because their go-to-market model always demanded advanced human judgment, deep expertise, trust building, right from the very first contact.
That complexity, that's the barrier automation just can't easily cross.
Precisely. It's the fire break.
Okay, so let's unpack this more. Our first major takeaway seems simple on the surface. BD isn't just surviving automation.
No, far from it. It is cited in the research as one of the fastest growing and best paid functions in the entire go-to-market ecosystem. It's booming.
And this is the big boom, but you only get access to that boom if you bring the right skills to the table, right?
Absolutely. The research makes it crystal clear. Talent costs. They are directly proportional to the skill level required. If you want a genuinely high-skilled BD professional,
You have to be ready to pay for that sophistication. Makes sense.
it does.
So what defines that highly skilled, high-cost BD professional today in 2024? It's definitely not just about hitting quotas anymore.
Not at all. The required proficiencies detailed in our sources are, well, expansive. You need a foundational history of generating measurable revenue, of course. That's kind of table stakes now.
Right, baseline expectation. But beyond that, general sales history.
The bar is raised significantly on technical competence. You have to possess deep technical knowledge of your own product, yes, but equally important, comprehensive knowledge of your key competitors' products.
So you can contrast and compare strategically, not just pitch features.
Exactly. And that strategic level, it extends beyond the product itself. The role demands deep knowledge of the industry's history, its current trends, the key players in the prospects market.
You need to walk in and speak their language, the highly specialized language of the customer's world.
You got it. And don't forget the operational side. Either proficiency with all the modern selling tools and tactics is assumed.
But the requirement that really signals the shift, I think, is the need for a proven history of effective collaboration.
Oh, absolutely critical. High-skill BD professionals are nexus points now. They have to connect the dots between marketing's initiatives, the prospecting team's leads, and the downstream sales team's closure process.
It's definitely not a soloist role anymore. You have to be a connector. Okay, so that need for a complex and specific skills mix, that brings us neatly to our first core analytical tool, the Customer Acquisition Skills Mix Model, or CASM.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the CSM model tells us to, well, stop focusing so much on that tired old distinction.
You mean B2B versus B2C?
That's the one. That distinction is becoming essentially irrelevant for this analysis. The CSM model posits that the true differentiator, The thing that really defines what skills you need and where you deploy them is the intent threshold of the customer.
Intent threshold. Okay, break that down.
It's about how ready the customer is. Do they arrive with very high intent to purchase something specific? Or do you, the BDR, have to spend significant time and effort building that intent, maybe defining the problem, establishing trust, often from a pretty cold start?
Got it. So let's look at the two extremes this intent threshold creates. First up, the high intent threshold scenario, HIT. Give us an example of a HIT product.
Okay, think highly customized enterprise software, or maybe complex medical devices, large-scale financial services deals. These are complex products, right?
Right, and often complex buyers, too. Multiple stakeholders, long decision cycles.
Exactly. Because of that inherent complexity, high BD skill is required very early, right there in the activation phase, just to build that initial trust and navigate the organization effectively.
Okay, now here's the paradox, the bit that really challenged my assumptions reading this stuff. The CSM model suggests that in that HIT scenario where the prospector, the BDR, has done all that heavy lifting, managing complexity, building trust,
Right.
the subsequent salesperson who actually closes the deal requires lower sales skills. That seems backwards.
It does initially, but think it through. If that initial BD professional has successfully navigated the, let's call it the political landscape, and built the foundational trust needed for that complex sale, then the closing salesperson's job becomes much more about efficient execution and conversion. The really high skill value, the heavy lifting, was front-loaded into that discovery and activation process.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying the most valuable skill, the one deserving the highest pay in a complex sale, it might not be the closer anymore. It's the opener, the trust builder.
In many HIT scenarios, yes. That's what the model implies.
Why? Why is that upfront work suddenly so much more valuable than getting the final signature?
Because in a true HIT scenario, the core problem often isn't getting the signature itself. The real challenge is defining the actual problem correctly, securing buy-in across multiple departments, building credibility with all those stakeholders who are naturally risk-averse.
Things automation can't easily do.
Exactly. Automation can schedule meetings, maybe send follow-ups. It cannot handle nuanced political navigation or design a truly customized solution architecture on the fly. That human complexity is the value.
Okay, that clicks. That makes sense. Now let's flip it. What about the low intent threshold scenario, LIT?
So LIT means simpler products, much shorter sales cycles, and often really high prospect volume. Think of certain consumer sauce trials, maybe highly standardized B2B commodities.
Where conversion efficiency is king.
Totally. So here, you often use lower skill prospectors, people primarily focused on just generating a massive volume of leads and scheduling those initial meetings. It's volume over deep strategy.
Okay, so in that case, following the logic, the subsequent seller must possess much higher skills.
Precisely. Because they're receiving a large volume of maybe lower quality, or at least lower intent prospects.
Right.
If the prospector is lower skill and focused purely on volume, the conversion rate per lead will likely be lower. So the seller has to be incredibly efficient and effective at handling objections, qualifying quickly, and driving closure across a large, varied pool of prospects.
So the high-skill heavy lifting happens much later in the cycle, at the point of conversion where that efficiency is absolutely paramount.
You got it. It's all about strategically balancing where you deploy that expensive high-skill talent based on the customer's starting point.
Makes sense. Now, speaking of deployment, the sources did briefly touch on a few instances where we see full-cycle business developers. You know, where the prospector and the seller are the same person.
Yeah, that's still common, especially in the startup phase, right, where resources are tight and often the founders or very early employees are doing both jobs out of necessity.
Sure.
But the sources note that even later, during the growth phase, if the product category happens to position itself where the necessary seller skill curve intersects nicely with the prospector skill curve.
Meaning the complexity level stays pretty consistent throughout the cycle.
Exactly. If that's the case, that full cycle model can actually remain highly effective.
Yeah.
But again, it all comes back to knowing your intent threshold first. You have to diagnose before you prescribe the structure.
Okay, so moving from the required skills mix to the actual type of human insight needed. This brings us to our second critical model, the customer acquisition team archetypes, the CATA model.
Right. And the CATA model is, I think, a brilliant synthesis. It essentially blends that intent threshold idea from KSM with the famous seller archetypes, presented way back in 2015 by former Forrester VP Andy Hoare. He wrote that really influential article, Death of a B2B Salesman.
Hold on, 2015, that's nearly a decade ago. Why are we relying on research that old to define the future of BD? Isn't that counterintuitive?
You'd think so, but Hoare's work was incredibly prescient. It wasn't just analyzing the state of play back then, it actually predicted the rate of change that automation and digitization would cause.
I see.
And those predictions are now proving chillingly accurate. He essentially defined the roles most vulnerable to technology and, crucially, those most likely to survive and thrive.
Okay, fair enough. So let's break down those 4 archetypes in the Kata model. It's based on skill type versus intent, right?
Correct. So on the low skill end, you have 2 roles that are generally high volume and, frankly, highly vulnerable to automation. First, there's the explainer.
Okay, the explainer.
This is a low-skill salesperson.
Yeah.
Their main job is just finding and sharing basic product information, usually for prospects who already have relatively high intent, HIT. Think basic demos, feature lists.
Got it. And the second low skill one?
That's the order taker. This is more of a low-skill prospector role. They're quickly converting buyers who have already clearly declared their intent and their ability to buy.
Yeah.
Very transactional.
Like processing an inbound request where the decision's basically made?
Exactly. Now, let's look at the high-skill side. Much more interesting. First, you have the navigator.
The navigator. Sound like they guide people.
They do. This is a highly skilled salesperson. They handle the complex logistics later in the cycle, finding detailed, specific information, recommending the best next actions for prospects who are already pretty well informed but need help navigating the final stages.
Guiding the ship into port efficiently, as it were.
Good analogy, yeah. But the archetype that our sources, really leaning on Hoare's predictions, single out as the undisputed future growth engine. That's the consultant.
The consultant. Okay, this sounds like the BDR role we were discussing earlier.
It is. This is the highly skilled prospector, or BDR. They don't just explain the product. They provide genuine, deep expertise. They help the prospect diagnose and solve complex, often unstructured business problems. They manage incredibly complex internal buying processes for the customer.
This is where that indispensable human judgment comes in, the part that commands higher compensation.
Absolutely. This is the role least vulnerable to automation because it thrives on ambiguity and complexity.
Okay, so here is where the prescience of that 2015 research becomes, well, stunningly clear. Because the statistics Hoare predicted back then seem to perfectly mirror the massive shift we're actually experiencing right now.
It's quite remarkable. He predicted a dramatic, almost violent realignment of the sales workforce based on these archetypes.
And this is the absolute key takeaway for professionals listening right now, isn't it? The numbers.
This is the core message. Hoare predicted that the consultant archetype, that high-skill BDR role, would grow by 10%. It's the only archetype the data showed growing significantly.
Only 10% growth for the only growing role. That sounds small.
Well, consider the other side of the coin. This is the truly chilling part.
Okay.
He predicted that all the other archetypes, the explainer, the order taker, and even the high-skill navigator, would see a collective, massive decrease.
How massive?
A staggering 73% decrease in the total volume of those roles combined.
73%.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you work in business development or sales, you simply cannot ignore that number. We are witnessing the rapid automation or elimination of nearly 3/4 of traditional selling tasks.
And why? What's driving that huge drop?
It's really 2 things Hoare saw coming. First, technology increasingly enables customers to self-navigate most of their early buying journey. They can find product info, pricing, reviews, often without needing a human explainer.
Right, the information is readily available.
And second, technology is also automating many of those low-skill lead generation and qualification tasks previously handled by order takers and lower-level SDRs.
So the core message, boiling it all down, is that while automation is definitely eradicating low-skill repetitive selling,
It is, mercilessly.
the high-skill function, true business development focused on trust, complexity management, and that consultative human insight that's unequivocally the path forward, that's where the growth and value are.
It's actually a very exciting time, I think, but it's one that demands immediate, really intentional professional adaptation. You have to consciously decide which category you're building your career towards. Aim for consultant.
Okay, let's try and quickly wrap up this deep dive for you, the business developer listening. Let's give you the 3 most critical takeaways distilled from these CASMM and CATA models.
That's good. The first takeaway, driven home by those stark statistics, is absolute. Skill is king. Low-skill selling is demonstrably disappearing.
Simple as that.
Pretty much. If you want to access those 10–20% higher earnings we talked about, you must focus on mastering strategic prospecting, genuine trust building, and effective activation. That is the new definition of the modern high-paid BDR.
Okay, takeaway number 2.
Number 2, intent dictates team structure. Use the CSM model we discussed as your analytical tool. Really analyze your product's intent threshold. Is it typically high intent, HIT, or low intent, LIT?
Because that diagnosis is critical.
It's absolutely critical to correctly balancing your resources. You have to know if you need to invest your high-cost talent, primarily in prospecting upfront to manage complexity, or if you need those high-skill selling resources focused downstream for efficient conversion. Get it wrong, and you're wasting money and effort.
Makes perfect sense. And the final takeaway.
And finally, number 3, the consulting future is, frankly, non-negotiable. Andy Hoare's data from way back in 2015 is proving true right now. The consultant archetype is the only significant growth engine predicted to expand by 10%.
While the majority of other traditional selling roles are shrinking drastically by that staggering 73% figure.
Exactly. So if your professional development plan, your personal upskilling, doesn't center around building genuine consultative problem-solving expertise, you are essentially aiming your career at one of the shrinking categories. It's a conscious choice you need to make.
So what does this all mean for you right now today? Here's a final provocative thought we want to leave you with, something to chew on as you go about your day.
Yeah, think about this. If your current BD role relies primarily, maybe solely, on being an explainer or an order taker,
Meaning you're currently handling mostly low complexity, maybe repetitive tasks.
ask yourself, what specialized knowledge, what unique perspective, or what structural complexity are you actively building into your offering, into your personal value proposition today?
What are you doing to make your specific human insight truly indispensable tomorrow?
Because the age of the human robot, the person just executing repeatable tasks, that's officially over in this field. The age of the expert consultant, the trusted advisor, that has truly begun.
Thank you for going deep with us into your source material today. We really appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.